All right, are we good? All right, we're going to give out some some leftover door prizes, so you're going to need to get out your tickets. Now, these are some of the ones that were already designated to a number, but a bunch of them were claimed, but a handful of them were not claimed. So we're going to call out these numbers again, and if you don't claim it with your number, then we'll pull another ticket, and we'll find a winner for the rest of these here. So I'm only going to read the last four numbers. So there's a bunch of numbers at the beginning that are all the same. I'm going to read the last four numbers, all right? You think we can handle that? I think we can figure it out. Here we go. We've got a $20 gift card to the downtown OIP. Last four digits are 2023. 2023. Anybody? Anybody? All right, I'm going to pull a ticket then. We'll see if we can find a winner here. Oh, man. You snooze, you lose, man. All right, I'll tell you what. I'll circle back around for any that we don't get here. We'll give them a couple more minutes to get here. 4710. This is for Wilson's Meats. We're in a meaty mood right now, so 4710. No takers. Here we go. 4532. 4532. 4532. Over here, all right, you're going to Dairy Queen, 2 blizzards. You can find somebody thinner to do it if that's what you need to do. That's fine. You know, we spread the love. That's fine. I should tell you, this is more blizzards from DQ. 4664. 4664. I'm going to keep going through these. This one is KFC meals, 4506. I'm reading the last four digits, 4506. No winner yet. Here we go. We got 4506. You're going to KFC. Enjoy some chicken meals. We got bowling at Lewistown Lanes. Last four digits, 4536. 4536. Keep trucking along here. KFC meals, 2039, 2039. We got a winner here. You want to take this back? Right there. Next is Burger King. Got some gift cards for Burger King, 2025, 2025. See that one? There we go. $20 at Country Kitchen, 2036, 2036. Who's going to Country Kitchen? 2036. Over here. Very good. All right. Sheets, 4713. 4713. No winners there. All right, let's move along. We're going to circle back to these, give you one more chance. This looks like a shirt of some sort. 4712. 4712. Here? Did I hear here? 4712? Apparently not. My ears are deceiving me. All right. Fair enough. We'll get someone else for that. We got some corn pone. Is this Shirley's corn pone? Oh. Yeah, you want the corn pone. Here we go. 47. Not that I've ever eaten any of Shirley's corn pone. I'm just speaking hypothetically. 4705. 4705 for some corn pone. Anybody? I mean, this is worth lying for. Really? Okay. Guess not. Can a pastor make that joke? I don't know. I just did. Here we go. This is a Yeti cup. Yeti cup, 4677. 4677. No dice. All right. Here we go. We got a hat, 2030, 2030. Nope. Here we go. This is one of these. Okay. 4543. 4543. Got the winner? All right, very good. You've got one of those. I am not an outdoorsman. let's circle back through these. We're going to go through these and pull them out now. So we're going to now pull numbers. Well, I'll give you one more chance, and then we're going to pull a number if we don't have a winner. So again, last 4 digits, we're going to cycle through these quickly. 4536. We're back to bowling. 4536. Got the winner? Good. Enjoy your bowling. Here we go. Last 4 digits, DQ Blizzards. 4664. 4664. All right, Steve, you want to pull a number? Here we go. Yeah, you want to hold that? Just hold it. Yeah. All right. 45. Oh, good grief. 4536. 4536. All right. Here you go. DQ. Here we go. We're trying again with Wilson's Meats. 4710. 4710. 4710. No dice. All right, pull one, Steve. 4588. All right, get some meat. Downtown OIP, 2023. 2023. Pull one, Steve. Here we go, 4516. 4516. In the back. Take it back. You fight over it. Okay, here we go. Now we're going to sheets. 4713. 4713. 4713. Nope. Pull one, Steve. All right. We're moving on to 4667. 4667. 4557. 4557. Winner in the back. All right, going to sheets. Here we go. Yeti, 4677. 4521. 4521. There you go. There you go. We got the hat, 2030. 4553. 4553. In the back. All right. Oops. We got a shirt. Pull one. 4567. 4567. 4567. Nope. Next one. 4699. 4699. 4508. 4508. And I'm going to be preaching in this shirt on Sunday if somebody doesn't get this soon. 4575. 4575. Got the winner. All right. Very good. We're back to the corn pone. That's right. He can preach in the shirt. That sounds good. My sermon's not that good this Sunday, so you can go for it. All right, here we go. 4736 for the corn pone. 4736. Here we go. Moving along. 4523. 4523. 4523 in the back. You will not regret this. All right, very nice. So now we're moving on to the primary prizes. This is the youth. Do you want to Price is Right, model that in some way? I don't think you're ready for Price is Right, Steve. All right. Pull one for us.
Well, it's got, I can't.
No, that's all right. Here you go. Pull a ticket. This is for the yellow one, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
You're right. Steve, you've always been able to pull strings. You just did. Oh, look at this.
Give it to me. I'll figure it out.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah,
It did. 2036. 2036 for the kids. Over there. All right. That is awesome. All right. What's next, Steve?
over there.
All right. What is it?
It's a Fox Pro.
Fox Pro. Pretty nice little thing there for doing the thing that thing does. Okay. So you want to pull a ticket? That's right. Here we go. 4658. 4658. Close but no cigar. 4658. Next. 4659. There it is. All right. Little patience. Very nice. All right, we got a couple more knives, and then I think we're done with our prizes. What do we got here? There you go. I'm not going to touch it. I'll slice my finger off. But here we go. 4748. 4748. 4634. 4634. No dice. We'll keep rolling. 4741. 4741.
One of them's for the youth.
Is it that one there? All right, we're pulling a youth number for this one. Thanks for clarifying. I appreciate that. 2030. 2030 from the kids. No 2030. All right, another yellow one. 2039. 2039. There we go. All right. Very good. Now we got two more. Was it just one of the knives was for the kids? The others? All right, sounds good. The other one. Okay, very good. So if you get one of these knives, look for you afterwards. There you go. Just find the handsome gentleman. Sounds good. Would you like to, what's your name? Roy. Okay, find Roy. Here we go. Two more knives. This one is 4616. All right, that was quick. Very nice. One more. 4707. 4707. 4586. 4586. We'll get there soon. Here we go. 4745. The last one? Yep, that was it. Again, we're gonna take the honor system here in the house of the Lord. We trust you. Sounds good. All right, did we get rid of all of them? I think we did. Good work. Thank you for your patience. Hopefully you are all able to, or many of you were able to claim something to take home with you as a gift for tonight, and we're certainly all glad to have you here. I think most of the kitchen crew is still down in the kitchen cleaning up, so can we clap and hoot and holler so they can hear us to thank them for their work? All right. Very good. Andy, are we funneling the sound down there? All right, they could hear that. That was great. Very nice. Thank you. All right, I have the privilege to introduce our guest speaker for tonight, Scott Garman. Actually, we grew up together, or at least met as teenagers. We played on the same boys volleyball team at Hempfield High School back in Lancaster County, where we both grew up. Our paths kind of diverged after high school, and then they reemerged as we both ended up back in pastoral ministry, continued to be involved in the volleyball community. I actually reeled him in to become a volleyball official along with me in the last couple of years, and it's been a joy for me to see the journey that the Lord has had Scott on for all of these years. And basically, Scott checked two boxes that made me say, hey, I want to ask if he would come and would speak for us tonight. He loves hunting, and he loves Jesus. And he checked those two boxes, and I said, he's the right kind of guy to come and share. So without further ado, can we give a warm Mifflin County welcome to Scott Garman?
Before we get started, let me just open with a very quick word of prayer. Would you bow your heads? Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this time, and we just ask that your Spirit would be present amongst us, that you would be glorified in our lives, that we can laugh together, that we can journey through life together for a brief moment, and that you would be honored in all we say and do. We pray these things in Christ's name. Amen. Chad introduced me pretty quick there, so I'll give you some very quick background. I'm married, I have a wife, I have 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. My oldest daughter is 21, my youngest boy is 16. So we're transitioning to that empty nest phase in our lives, which is quite interesting right now. Chad said we grew up in Lancaster County together, and I'm not going to take too long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to journey with you a little bit through my hunting background. I thought it was ironic when Chad asked me to speak tonight about hunting, because normally when you have people speak at events like this, they're pretty well versed. They're pretty well knowledged. And I like to think that I am, but the reality is I'm just an average hunter like most of you guys are. An average hunter who's had some pretty incredible opportunities. I look at a guy named Bruce. There's a fellow from my church named Bruce. And Bruce has a game room at his house. Now think about this. In Bruce's game room, and he has to build onto it because he just went to Africa last summer. In Bruce's game room, Bruce has the Grand Slam of North American sheep. All 4 of them, full body mounts. He's got his mountain goat as a full body mount. He's got a grizzly bear in a full body mount, which is the largest grizzly shot in the Yukon in 2016, according to the skull size. He's got his full-size mountain lion, full body mount. He's got 6 Iowa whitetail shoulder mounts that are between 170 and 190 score, along with a couple elk. Hanging over his fireplace in his great room is a moose with a 65-inch spread, I think it is. So when I look at people who should be speaking at events like this, I think of guys like Bruce, right? And you guys were kind enough to ask me to come up, so I'll try not to put you to sleep. Hopefully I'll make you feel a little bit better about yourselves as I talk about some of my experiences in the woods. And I'm guessing that more of us than would like to admit can relate to some of the experiences that I've had. Because I didn't grow up in a hunting family. My dad hunted, but he wasn't a hunter. So my dad enjoyed spending time in the woods, but he didn't care if he shot a deer at all. As a kid, every year, my dad would go out for the opening day of rifle season and maybe a couple hours on first Saturday. Opening day of rifle season was Monday back then, which is what it should still be, in my opinion, but it is what it is. You can have your own opinions on that. There's just something different about it. Anyway, I remember every Monday night that he would be out hunting, I would just wait for Dad to get home, and as soon as I heard the door, I'd go running out to the back of the pickup truck to see if there was anything inside, and there never was. And I say that quite literally. My dad never harvested a deer in his life, and he never cared if he did. He was happy to just be outside and be in the woods for a day. Things I learned from my father through hunting were always have food with you. We'd stop for breakfast on the way if we ran across a restaurant, and we always carried chocolate in the woods, which is great because my mother never let us have chocolate at home. So I knew my dad was sneaking it, so I kept my mouth shut so we continue to do it, right? My dad taught me that on the opening day of rifle season, things are pretty slow between 12 and 2, right around lunchtime. So that's a good time to find a south-facing slope with a lot of sun and lay down and take a nap for a couple hours, because that's the best you're going to do anyway. More than anything, what I realized, especially later on in life, is what my dad really cared about was relationship. It was just about being together, about spending time together. The car rides probably meant as much to him as sitting in the woods and looking for deer did. With that being said, I started hunting when I was 12 years old. For the first approximately decade of my hunting experience, I was very good at carrying on the Garman family tradition of coming home empty-handed, which was a problem for me because while my dad wanted to hunt to be outside, I wanted to hunt to harvest. I had never shot a deer. I wanted to harvest a deer. And my dad would always say, he'd say, "Scott, you got to be at the right place at the right time," which just ticked me off that much more because I knew he was right. Like everything he said was true, and we were never at the right place at the right time. So something eventually had to break, or so I thought. And when I think about my hunting experiences, when my family and I sit around and talk about hunting, more often than not, what we share are not our stories of success as much as our stories of humor. See, the way I describe my hunting life is it's more like my success has come from dumb luck and the law of averages playing out over time than any amount of professional fluency that I tend to put into this matter. One of the great stories that I was silly enough to tell my family, I was hunting by myself one time on top of a mountain, out by my house. I live in Mill Hall. There's state game lands all around us. I was hunting up Rag Valley Road, top of the mountain. It was the first Saturday. A doe came running across the top of the mountain. I plugged her. The problem was she was moving in the wrong direction, which I didn't think about at the time once I saw her. So I parked down on Hancock Road. She came up from that direction. When I shot, she had about 300 to 400 yards left in her. And she ran that down the wrong side of the mountain. So I went after her, maybe not 300 yards, maybe 100, 200 yards. She was about 200 vertical feet from the top of the mountain. I got to her, I found where she was, and I thought, there is no way I can drag this deer back to the top. There's no possible way. The problem is if I drug her down the side she was, it's a dead zone. It's a dead cell zone. I'd had to I'd drag her down, leave her, walk about 3 to 4 miles to get to the nearest cell phone signal, call my wife, get the truck from the end, drive all the way back down. It would have just been too much. So I removed the insides. I put her on my shoulder. I'd never done this before. Slung her over my shoulders and tried hiking back to the top of the mountain. Now, hiking with a deer on your shoulders, on rocks, on a boulder field is not an easy task. In fact, it became stupid. And here's what I mean. At one point, I went to step up and my foot slipped off the rock, and the deer, actually, as I caught myself, body cavity of the deer came over top of my head. And my head is now inside the body of this deer. And literally, after letting out a couple words I probably shouldn't say, certainly not as a pastor, I just stood there and laughed. Because what else are you going to do? Like stuff like that. These are the things that, one time I was taking my 2 youngest kids up. I think I have a picture of them. Yeah, that's them. It was actually taken on this day. We were hunting on another mountain up top. It's about 700 vertical foot to get to the top. We hiked up in the dark to get to the right spot. And as we did, we got about halfway up. The kids wanted to take a break. My son took off his headlamp and dropped it on the rock, and it broke. While my daughter was going to help him with his headlamp, she took off her backpack, which it was a really cold day, so all her clothes were stuffed in her pack, and this was a steep hill. You had to use your hands to climb at times. She didn't think that her backpack at that moment would shake more like a ball when she put it on the ground, and in the middle of about 5:30 in the morning, in the midst of my headlight, I watched this backpack just disappear down the mountain. Took me 10 minutes to go get it and bring it back up to her. These are the hunting stories that we usually share. And it's not that we haven't had success. We definitely have. But we find humor in the goofy stuff. Now, that being said, when I was in college, I'll fast forward a little bit. When I was in college, I had a buddy of mine, good friend of mine. His name was Joey Martin. I knew him for 9 months before coming to the understanding and realization that Joey Martin, the last name Martin, was synonymous with Martin's Potato Buns. Everybody in here a big fan? Because I know I am, right? So, came from a family with a fair amount of money, and what his father did as president of the company, he rewarded his executives and his top salesmen, there were 7 of them, once a year. If they met their goals, then he took them on a trip out west to go hunting. 4 days before their trip, one of the salesmen had an episode, ended up in the hospital, and Joey came to me and said, "Hey, Scott, we're going elk and mule deer hunting in Wyoming. We're leaving on Saturday. It was Tuesday. Do you want to go?" Yes, I want to go. Here's the problem. If you don't know this ahead of time, you haven't worked forward in your college studies ahead of time, and missing 2 weeks of school is near impossible to make up. And I had to tell him no, as much as it broke my heart, because I looked at that as a true once-in-a-lifetime experience. I never thought I was going to get that opportunity again. Fortunately for me, life doesn't always play out the way I think it does. God's got a bit of a sense of humor. And what I mean by that is simply this. The best man in my wedding, a good friend of mine named Clayt, he was actually my youth pastor in high school at the church I went to. He's 13 years older than me. And Clayt went hunting with his family when they were teenagers and stuff like that, but hadn't hunted in years. But about the time he turned 50, he owns an electrical contracting business, as well as made other really good investments and started up in a couple other companies. About the time he turned 50, Clayt came to me one day and he said, "Hey, Scott, I'm thinking about going elk hunting in Colorado in 2 years. Are you in?" Well, I was out of college at this point. So I said, "I am absolutely in." And we did. In 2012, we ventured out to a ranch. It was about a 5,000-acre ranch outside of Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And kind of looked like, that was what it looked like from where we're hunting. It was absolutely beautiful. And we spent 9 days hunting there. And was a great experience. On the 6th night, I had this guy go past me. He's not big. He's not a trophy. But I don't care. I shot an elk. You can't eat the antlers. And I'm not, something you should know about me is that by nature, I am not a trophy hunter. If it's brown, it's down. Like we hunt for the meat. My family usually gets about 3 to 5 deer a year. That is our red meat for the year. We don't buy beef. We don't buy stuff. We live on venison. So when I saw that guy, I was thrilled. It was absolutely great because what had happened, we were at the end of the season. The migration was almost done, and there was hardly any elk moving through. Fortunately for Clayt, 2 nights later, they took him to their private 450-acre hunting camp that wasn't too far away, and he was able to nail this. Oh, there we go. He was able to nail this guy. Nice little 6x6. And we just had a phenomenal experience. And here's what was great about it. I looked at it and I went, this is my once-in-a-lifetime experience. This is what it's about. I'm never going to get the opportunity to do this again. Well, Clayt had such a good time. He took his 4 boys and a friend of ours, Andrew, back to the same ranch. 2 years later, they all went hunting, had a great time. And the year after that, he came to me and said this. He goes, hey, Scott, what do you think about moose hunting? And I said, it sounds great. He said, what do you think about going moose hunting? And I looked at him, and we've been, again, friends for years. He knows me, I know him. And I said, Clayt, I would love to, but the reality is I can't afford something like that. And I'll never forget the words that came out of his mouth. He said, Scott, I didn't ask you if you could afford it. I asked if you wanted to go. I said, the words that every wise man says, let me check with my wife first, right? Because I'm pretty sure, yeah. And we did. In 2018, 3 years later, we found ourselves in British Columbia. Where we go? Are we running out of batteries? There we go. And that's where the first slide that was up was from British Columbia. Some of the pictures out there. It was absolutely beautiful. Both of us went out with a moose tag and an elk tag. We each had our own guide. From the base camp where we flew in, that would be the base camp. The big building there in the center is the big lodge. The building on the right, the wood building, was our bunkhouse, and then some other stuff around it. From there, my guide and I rode horseback out for about 6 miles to a spike camp by a stream that he had set up. Clayt and his guide flew about 12 minutes in the opposite direction. We had about 80,000 acres to hunt on. So it was a large area in northern British Columbia that we were able to go elk and moose hunting. I can't think of a better spot to sight in a rifle from. It was absolutely gorgeous. I think our batteries might be going here. There we go. On the second evening from spike camp, my guide and I, we had rode our horses way back in that day. We rode 5-6 miles one direction to hunt this big valley that hadn't been hunted in years. Came back to our tent. It had snowed a bunch that day. It had gotten in the tent. We cleaned up, got a fire going. We're getting ready to go back out in the evening. I got ready. He walked outside to get the horses ready. He said, Scott, there's a moose. 200 yards from our camp was where this guy was laying. And that just gives you a size estimate. Look, he's not a wall hanger. He's not breaking any records. Do I care? Absolutely not. I am not a trophy hunter. Guys, I live in a ranch house, right? I don't have room for an elk or a moose mount. I just flat out don't. What was great about it, actually, the next picture is, whoops, there we go. The next picture is from where the moose was shot, where he was dead. That white area in the shrubs there, that's where our tent was. So he was actually coming down that evening to get a drink out of the water, out of the pond, when I was able to nail him. Fast forward 3 days in the morning, we went out, calling cow calls from before the crack of dawn. And finally, around 8 o'clock in the morning, this guy answered. From the time we first heard him to about 10, 15 minutes later, we had him down. And he just exceeded my expectations. I was tickled to death with him. Right? I mean, what had happened, what we had planned on for years came to fruition. I harvested both of mine. I didn't know how Clayt was doing, but on the evening of the 7th day, he harvested an elk with his guide. And then on the 9th day, he was able to get his moose. So our trip to northern British Columbia, and we drove up because we wanted to bring the meat home. And we did. We literally came home with a ton of meat. About 2,000 pounds between 2 moose and 2 elk. Mine's gone. I think he still might have some in his fridge because he's got a little more to draw off of. But it was just a great experience. That was what we flew out on, the Beaver. Funny story that day, that morning. They actually had everything ran off solar at the cabin. And we didn't have anything to do. We didn't know we were going out that day until the weather cleared. And they had a movie collection there, and he picked out the movie The Edge. Has anybody ever seen the movie The Edge? Ironically, the movie The Edge is about a group of guys at a remote camp somewhere in Canada or Alaska who fly back in to try and find somebody in a beaver airplane, and when they do, their plane hits a bunch of birds, crashes into a lake, and the story is about them trying to make their way out of the wilderness. That's the movie we watched the morning that we got into a beaver airplane to fly over the Canadian Rockies back to the Alaskan highway. I said, I don't think, if we go, I blamed him. I'm like, if we go down, it's your fault. I flat out told him that, right? When we got back to our house that day, it was a Sunday morning. That's the last picture we took together. The irony of that picture is that Clayt's actually smiling. As we were getting close to the house, he wasn't feeling good. And I say the irony of that picture is simply this. When we were out at camp, we just drank straight out of the streams. Put your water bottle in the stream, drink it. It was absolutely wonderful. You're not going to get sick, they said. I didn't get sick. Clay was just starting to feel the effects of the Giardia, the beaver fever at this point. In the next 30 days, he lost about 45 pounds of body weight because he couldn't keep anything down before he started getting better. So that's the last smile you were going to see on him for quite some time, right? I thought I was done. This is the best hunt I'm ever going to go on. I'm never going to go on something like this. A couple years later, Clay comes to me and said, hey, I booked a hunt. He didn't even ask me this time. He said, we're going to New Mexico. You, me, my 2 sons, and our friend Andrew. We're going archery hunting for elk in New Mexico, like the Holy Land, right? If you archery hunt elk, you want to go to Mexico. That's where the giants are. Or so we thought. At least the giants weren't where we were hunting. We had a good time being together, but it was a bust of a hunt. We saw a shooter bull the first morning who never presented himself. We did not see another animal for 4.5 days. Not another elk at all. Never pulled a bow back, never launched an arrow, none of the 5 of us. So as we were driving home from New Mexico, the whole trip, it was about a 36-hour drive, was we need redemption, right? We need to make up for this. We need to make this thing right. So these are just some New Mexico pictures here, glassing around a little bit, me looking over the basin, trying to tell them where to go to see elk, but I never saw any elk myself, so I couldn't really help them out. Double rainbow, that was kind of cool, right? After we got back, Clayton made a call to my friend Mike. My friend Mike is a hunting consultant, good friend of mine. If you ever want to go on a big hunt, I would highly recommend Mike Schuback from Infinity Hunts. He is phenomenal. He met with the 4 of us, myself, Clayton's youngest son, Austin, our friend Andrew. Picked our brains about what we wanted, and he said, I think Opal Butte Ranch in eastern Oregon would be perfect for you guys. So we scheduled the hunt for the fall of 2024, and last September, in the middle of September, we drove out to Opal Butte. Now, I put this picture up here because I've down-talked myself and my hunting abilities a fair amount here, and it's true. But I've been shooting my bow for approximately 1.5 years, multiple times a week, certainly in the warmer months, 5 to 6 days a week. And I had a good night, and this was a good night for me about a month out from the hunt. Those arrows are all anywhere from 42 to 57 yards. Different spots, different angles. I'm on, right? I'm ready to go. A week before the hunt, I got a new release. It was the same release I was using. I used a thumb release. It was the same one, but I wanted a backup one, so I was shooting. And on the 7th shot I took that night, one of the bolts in my release busted. I was about half to 3/4 draw, and all of a sudden I know my arrow is just flopping up towards the target. The bow was in my left hand. I'm a right-handed shooter. The bow was in my left hand. It felt like somebody just hit my hand as hard as I could. Like it didn't break my hand or anything like that, but I couldn't hold on to it. Next thing I know, my bow is on the ground. The strings have jumped off the cams, and I'm going, what is going on here? Because we literally leave in 7 days for this hunt, and I'm not even sure I can take this bow anymore. I took it to Miller's Gun Shop, which is where I go. It's right down the road from me. The next morning, and fortunately, Bryce, who's there, is awesome, had a string. He had one string that would fit it. He restrung my bow, said, you're good to go. The problem is, now I'm not so good up here, right? It's just in your head a little bit. Plus, the string was a little bit different, so the bow didn't shoot the same. I had to adjust my sights, and I spent about 3-4 days until I felt comfortable with that. And it's not where you want to be leading into a hunt like this. And I say that because it will come back to play later, all right? So in the middle of September last year, we headed out to Opal Butte Ranch, which is in eastern Oregon. Opal Butte is actually on that ranch. It's one of, if not the highest points in eastern Oregon, and they actually mine opals off of it. It's a 10,000-acre ranch. The owner has another 30,000 acres leased around it. So we had a lot of room to hunt. And guys, we were not roughing it by any stretch of the imagination. We wanted time to be together, to hang out and to talk, and that was what we got. So some of these pictures are just there. Whoa, whoa, whoa. They really don't. Those are the cabins we stayed in. The one on the top on the far left is our cabin. It was a 4-man cabin. The other ones are 2-man cabins. Look, beds, toilets, running water, showers. It was absolutely beautiful. It was absolutely wonderful. Rocking chairs on the front porch. We were like a bunch of old folks sitting out there just rocking away, loving life, looking at I'll show you another picture there. This is inside the main lodge, right? So what you're looking at is the kitchen area there. That's a big island. We did not hurt for food. We were eating plenty of food. It was absolutely gorgeous inside. They had fed us hot lunches, hot suppers in the morning. We just kind of picked before we go out in the woods. And then this area here, sorry, I'm shooting it the wrong way. This is the pavilion in between where the main lodge is at and our hunting cabins are at. If you look to the right, you'll see the hot tub on the right-hand side. There's a fire ring in there. And inside that wooden part is a sauna, in case you got really cold, I guess, and wanted to come back. What was funny is we got there the first day. Clayton and I, we started hunting on Thursday. Clayton and I rolled in about noontime on Wednesday. We met the camp cook first. He said to us, he was telling us all kinds of stories. He said, hey, 2 weeks ago, a guy named Gary LaVox was here. You ever hear of Gary LaVox? If you've not, you've probably heard of the group Rascal Flatts. Gary LaVox is the lead singer from Rascal Flatts. He was out there hunting elk that week, and he got a dandy. And apparently they know how to party pretty good, because him and the boys were all out there, and they said they partied through the night till 5:30 in the hot tub the next morning, and surprisingly to no one, nobody went out hunting the next morning. But they were the nicest guys in the world, he said. The week after that, there was a guy named Chad Mendez there. Chad Mendez is a former UFC fighter who had a title shot, fought Conor McGregor for the title one time, stuff like that. He has his own YouTube channel, documented his hunt out to Opal Butte. And the cook looked at us and he goes, I didn't recognize either of those guys. I just don't know who's famous. And he looked at us and he goes, you guys aren't famous that I don't know of, are you? And I was like, unless you tap into the Cedar Heights YouTube channel at 9:45 on Sunday mornings in Lock Haven, Pennsylvania, I highly doubt so, you know? But it was funny getting that question from him. So all that to say. Now, this is how little we were roughing it. The owner of the ranch is a guy named Jim. Jim was 69 years old. He had a birthday a week after we left, so he's 70 years old now. Jim has a lot of money. That's how he bought a 10,000-acre ranch in eastern Oregon. He made his money in excavating. Bought the ranch in 2004. So he had it for 20 years when we were there last fall. In 2019, Jim decided to order a Tesla Cybertruck because he thought they looked cool. Ordered it in 2019. It got delivered 3 weeks before we showed up. Unfortunately, Jim had just contracted, I think he'd been diagnosed about 4 months before we got there with a form of leukemia. So he was undergoing chemo treatments. So he wasn't feeling real great. But on the second morning, he was apparently feeling pretty good. And he said, hey, I'll take Scott and Clayton out to their deer stand, or out to the elk stand this morning. And I said, okay, what are we going to drive in? They had a truck. They had side-by-sides. He goes, let's take the Cybertruck. What I didn't know at that time, that was literally only the second time he had ever driven the vehicle. We couldn't figure out how to put the bench seat in the back down. I'm like, I ain't touching anything, because I am not going to break something in this vehicle that costs more than my house. He didn't even know how to turn the defrost on. Everything's in that middle panel with a picture on it. He didn't know how to turn it on. So he got off, took out his iPhone, and started scraping the windshield. That's how he cleared it that morning. He goes, I guess these phones are good for something. Eventually, we got it all figured out. He got us off to our spot. But it's not often that you go somewhere and you get escorted to your stand in a Tesla Cybertruck. Now, kudos to him, because he did drive it like off-road, across the meadow, across creek beds, the whole 9 yards and stuff like that. We hunted mornings, we hunted evenings, we hung out in the middle of the day. Now we're getting into the story. This is the kind of the meat of my experience. First morning, Andrew and I went to stands up on the mountain, new stands. Nothing was going. And what I learned is there wasn't a whole lot of elk movement in the mornings. We thought we were going to be doing spot and stalk in the morning, stand hunting in the evening. Well, we just stand hunted the whole time. And the reason was that I figured out real quick is they didn't want us going in there and blowing all the elk out, right? Because the elk were there. There's no reason to push them. They're going to come in the evenings. So when Jim bought the property in 2004, like I said, he made his money in excavating. The first thing he did on his property is anywhere where he found water, he took an excavator and he dug a big hole. So there was water holes all over his property and none at any of the surrounding properties. which drew big herds in. Okay? The other thing that you'll find interesting in Oregon, that I found interesting, is you're not allowed to use any kind of electronic sights at all. Even if your bow has the thing that you turn it up where you can see they lighten up at night and stuff like that, you're not allowed to use that. Ironically, though, you are allowed to bait, apparently. So every afternoon when they took us to our stand, if you look at the green area in between the evergreens there on the ground, they'd throw a couple bales of alfalfa down to help draw in the elk. Made for an interesting experience, which I had no idea before that moment that was even allowed or legal. So all that to say, went out in the morning, first morning, nobody really had any action. There was another fellow there. There was one other hunter with our 4 group. So there's 5 of us. Don, he was from Mississippi. He had a southern drawl. He was great. He was in his mid-70s and just loving life, and we had a great time with Don. Don didn't see anything either, but in the evening, they took me to the Whiskey Shack. That's the name of this stand, and that's the primary view out of the Whiskey Shack. And I was excited. I'm like, all right, it's going to happen tonight, right? It's only the first night, but your blood's pumping. And it would get dark right around 7:15. About 6 o'clock, 4 cow elk came down the hill towards there. And I've never seen animals as skittish as these elk were in their life. It took them 15 minutes to get from 50 feet of the water to the water. Another 15 minutes just to move 30 feet around. And when they were doing that, something very unfortunate happened was the wind shifted. Instead of blowing in my face, now the wind is now blowing at my back. So eventually, they just didn't like the situation. They turned, they walked back up the hill. I thought, that's all right, we still have time. And at about 6:45, I could see some movement up on top of the hill. You could see elk moving. All I could see was cows, and then you heard the bull bugle. And you could see the bull moving through the brush. You couldn't see how big it was, but he was rounding everybody up, and he was not letting his girls come down to the water that night. He just didn't like the way it was set up. So I didn't see anything that night. My buddy Andrew didn't really see anything that night. But Clayt, his stand was about a mile, not even a mile, about a half mile from mine. I said, how was your night? He goes, I've never seen anything like it. He said, I estimate that there was at least 150 elk around my stand. I couldn't get a shot at any of the bulls because there was just too many of them. So that gets your blood pumping, right? The next morning, I went back out to the Whiskey Shack again. They dropped me off. Nothing's going in the morning. You'd see some mule deer. I had some coyotes go through it one time, things like that. So it's not like you weren't seeing anything, but no elk action. Second evening is when it got really interesting. That's what I was looking forward to. You had a good feeling, right? I'm like, okay, this is going to be good. And sure enough, I get out to the stand at 2:30. Don't see anything at 3:30. 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, and I'm thinking maybe the Garman hunting curse is real, you know? But then somebody turned on the faucet. About 6:45, about a dozen cows just came, not just jogging down the hill, bolting down the hill. And if you looked up top, you could see all sorts of movement in the brush and in the ponderosa pines. Everything was coming our way. Finally, I saw a bull elk. It was a 5x5. And I was pretty sure he was a satellite bull. He wasn't the dominant herd bull. So when he came down, he actually walked about 35 yards broadside right past me. I got my draw on him. I put the pin on him. I went, yeah, I'm just going to hold off a little bit longer. Because here's what they told us. They said this. They said, everybody who's hunted here so far this year has gotten a shot, or at least had the opportunity to shoot. Be patient. You'll get a good shot. Don't rush it. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to hold off a little longer. I stopped counting. I started counting the elk. I stopped counting at 77 because everything was starting to get mixed together. So I'm guessing I had about 85 to 90 elk around that water hole and in front of him beside my stand that night. And shortly before dark, much to my fortune, the big guy came down. The herd bull came down. And he took a while because he came down and he got a drink and he moseyed around. And finally he came in front of me and stood broadside at 30 yards. Right? I've never shot an elk with a bow. My heart's pounding. You're trying to calm down, right? But your heart's pounding. So I drew back, and I was ready, and I went to settle the pin right on his vitals. And I couldn't see my pin. It was just dark enough where I couldn't see my pin. And I'm like, nobody's going to really know if you turn that little light on, are they? But I didn't. I would know, right? I would know. So I didn't turn the light on. But I was stoked. I was stoked. I'm like, he's here. He's going to come back. I can't wait. Met back at camp that night. Everybody else had very similar experiences. Nobody in our group shot. Don from Mississippi got a nice little 5x5 that night. So he was the first one out of anybody that week to harvest. Third morning comes, it's more of the same. Not much going on in the morning. Come back, we eat lunch about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They shuttle us back out to our stands. And guys, I was feeling good. Like this was a picture I took when I got out to my stand that night. I'm like, I just had a good feeling. I don't do the face paint stuff. I've got it because I have it, so I put it on just to be goofy and fun. I'm like, maybe it'll help. I don't know. Well, sure enough, about 3:30 in the afternoon, the herd bull by himself comes right down to the water hole. All by himself. And he's bugling back. He's trying to get the girls to come with him, but nobody's coming with him. He comes to the far side of the water hole, right behind that tree basically, which is about 75 yards away from me, and drinks and drinks and drinks. And I'm like, for the love, just make your way around. He drank for 5 minutes straight. And the whole time, he'd take a break, he'd turn around, and he'd call back up. And I'm like, no, don't call them down. You're here by yourself. The hay is right there. Just do your thing, man. Come on, it's just you and me. And then, instead of walking around the water hole, he walked into the water hole and started eating the algae. The whole time, bugling back up top. After 15 minutes of him being at that water by himself, about 24 other cows came down. I'm like, all right, here we go. He nuts around the water hole for about 5-10 minutes. He came out the other side and he walked over to the straw. He walked over to the alfalfa. I'm like, all right, this is it. Again, I ranged him at 30 yards. Arrow was knocked. I'm ready. Now he's straight on with me. He's facing me, but I know he's going to turn. So I get my draw. And I'm waiting for him to turn. And I'm waiting for him to turn. And I'm waiting for him to turn. You see where this is going, right? All right, after about 60 to 90 seconds, look, the reality is if you've ever had this happen, it's probably 10 seconds, but it feels like 5 minutes, right? And your shoulder starts getting the jigglies in it, and you go, this is not where I want to be taking a shot from. And here's where the Garmin hunting factor came into play. I'm like, I'm just going to release my grip, and right before the string on my bow got straight, I must have just ticked the release with my thumb. Just enough that the arrow came off the nock, off the string, through the whisker biscuit. Just enough to get it over the edge of my stand as I watched my arrow plinko down through the evergreen brush. And I watched all 20 to 25 elk that were around the water hole, and the alfalfa looked like a bunch of kids watching a tennis match. They're just like, right? And once the arrow hit the ground, then they all went and looked right at me. And I wanted to hit myself in the head. Right? Because I'm like, here this guy is. All I had to do is be patient, and I blew it. They stared at me for 5 minutes. They made their way back up the hill, but I was convinced I was going to get another shot at him that night. So I waited. And fortunately for me, around 5:30, it was still relatively early, he came back down with that same group of cows. He came over to the straw. He came over to the alfalfa. He stood broadside, and then the cows that were away from him moved away. His head was to my left. His rear was to my right. I ranged him at 27 yards. And guys, if you've ever hunted whitetail with a bow, shooting an elk at 27 yards is like winning the jackpot, right? Your kill area is 3 times the size. It's absolutely wonderful. So I drew back. I got on him. And right as I hit my release, I did something that I've never done my entire life. That as a hunter, I'm ashamed to admit, but I'm going to tell you the honest truth of what happened today. I'm going to show you some pictures later to back it up. I must have watched my arrow. Because I went like this, and when I released, I must have done that. Which changed the trajectory of that arrow about 3.5 feet. So instead of hitting him in his vitals, that arrow smacked him directly in the hams. He turned and he bolted to the left of where that picture is, straight away as far as I could see. There's actually an opening in the trees. I could watch him about 200 yards run straight away from me. The 15 to 20 cows that were with him ran right back up the hill. And guys, my heart sank. I can't tell you how much my heart sank. I hated myself at that moment. I prepared for this moment for years. That's why I showed you the group of arrows I shot earlier, right? It was all good until the string came off my bow and I started to question myself. And I'm sitting there hitting myself, literally hitting myself. And I called back. The rule was you had a two-way radio with them. If you had action, you called back. So I called back. I said, hey, Casey was the lead guide. Casey, I shot. He said, how was it? I said, it was terrible. I made a bad shot. Made a bad shot. Don't know what else to say, right? I was so upset. He goes, okay. He said, actually, Andrew and Austin already shot tonight too. He said, we're going to go after Andrew's bull tonight. Probably wait till tomorrow morning to get Austin's bull. But we're going to have to get all that stuff settled out till we pick you up tonight. So you're there till we get you. Their theory was, we don't want you coming out of the stand and scaring any elk away because they hear you or smell you or see you. But if we drive in with the headlights on, they'll move back away far enough that we can get in and out easier. So I didn't know how long I was going to be there. So I laid down on the floor of that stand for the next 2.5 hours, hitting myself, hating myself, and upset. And I know those aren't the right things to say, right? I'm a pastor. I should be praying about this. I did. And it was hard praying. I was upset with myself. I was upset with everything. And look, in the grand scheme of things, is this the end-all, be-all? No, but when you're a hunter, right? You know how big and how rare these moments are. You understand the enormity of them. And when that happens to you and it gets away from you, it was so upsetting to me. And I was so distraught, so I just laid there and waited to be picked up. They rolled in about 9:30. They told me they had already recovered Andrew's elk. Andrew shot a nice little 5x5 that night. Made a great shot. Andrew's a phenomenal hunter. Doesn't surprise me at all. We went back. We grabbed supper around 10 o'clock that night. Austin actually recorded his hunt, so we were watching the footage from his. They're like, yeah, his elk's down. We'll go get it first thing in the morning, and then we'll see what's up with yours, Scott. So what I did is I talked them into driving me back out to the stand the next morning because I wanted to see what was going on, just to make sure he wasn't running around or something still. You know, and Casey, the lead guide, said, are you sure it hit him in the ham? I said, absolutely. Absolutely, I saw it. It hit him right. He goes, I'm just asking, Scott, because I've had guys be sure of stuff before, and then when we actually find out what happened, it wasn't what they thought happened. I said, look, it went in directly in his ham. It only penetrated about 6 inches. He turned and ran. All that to say, went to bed at 11:30 that night. If you've ever had to wait overnight to go try and locate an animal, you can understand. I woke up at 11:30 to bed, 1 o'clock wide awake. And I laid in my bed. I read some. I prayed some. I literally screamed into my pillow as loud as I could. I just couldn't get over the fact that I made such a big mistake. And here's why I say that. Because in all of my years of hunting, I've never once recovered an animal that I've made a bad shot on. Ever. It's never happened to me. When I got back that night, I called my wife on the phone and I told her what to tell. And what was her response? She's awesome. She's like, you know what? I'm going to pray. Me and the kids are going to pray about this. And I'm like, please do. And pray for me too, because I'm not in a good place right now. What should be a great experience has put me in a dark place. Finally, the morning rolls around. They take me back out to my spot. I get in that stand. And here's what was encouraging for me. Is every other morning I'd sat in that stand, I've heard that bull on top rounding up his herd. Just one bull rounding up that herd. That morning, that fourth morning as I sat there, I heard 4 different bulls bugling from up top. So my thought was, if my bull's out of the picture, if the whole herd bull is out of the picture, maybe other bulls are moving in to claim his cows now. This could be a good thing. Well, they showed up around 9:30 that morning, the guides did, after helping Austin recover his 6x6. And they said, all right, let's see what happened. So I get down out of the stand. I take him to where the elk was shot, and there's no blood on the ground at all. Not one drop. Where'd he go? Told you where he went. I told him where he went. You could follow his hoof tracks because he was digging in hard. Straight away from me, and we followed his hoof tracks. And we got about 200, 250 yards to the top of the rise. And we're looking. Casey and I are looking. The other 2 guides, Nate and Dave, they've gone into the brush, into the thick stuff to see if they can find any sign. Finally, about 250 yards from the shot, Casey and I literally found 1 drop of blood. 1 drop. That's it. And the air is so dry out there that the blood evaporates pretty quickly too. So Casey gets his cow call to try and bring the other two guides in. Hits it once, nothing happens. Hits it twice, and all of a sudden, the brush is just breaking loose in front of us. I see the elk that I shot. I see his antlers. I see his head crashing down the hill towards the road, dirt road, meadow on the other side. But I can't see him once he gets past us. But I knew immediately that was him. I recognized his antlers easily. We went to the spot. Apparently, when I shot him, he laid, and he bedded down in this super thick stuff. We found a puddle of blood about that big, not huge, and urine everywhere. And I can only see him running through the trees, but the two guides, Nate and Dave, they said, he is not moving well. He is not going far. So Nate took me. We went across to the meadow to make sure he hadn't bedded down in one of the thick spots on the other side. Didn't find him anywhere. Figured he probably went a little higher up on the hill, although we were sure he wasn't going to the top of the mountain because he wasn't moving well enough. So we packed it up. We went back in for lunch. So there's still hope, right? There's still hope. After lunch, Clayton and Austin went back to their stands. We went back out and did what I'm going to call one of the most shady recovery operations you'll ever see in your life. We went out in the Tesla. Myself, Andrew, and Don all had our bows. Jim, the owner, had his 6.5 Creedmoor. The head guide, Casey, had his rifle as well. The other two guides had their sidearms. They said, we're going to drive off this side of the hill, and anybody who sees it needs to shoot. Well, we formed our lines, and as we're walking out there, I turned to my buddy Andrew. I said, Andrew, this is shady, right? He looks at me and goes, oh, yeah. But it's awesome. I agreed. Long story short, we drove off the hill. We jumped him at one point, but didn't see where he went. We thought he was gone. Get down to the bottom. We hop in the side-by-side. I hop in with Jim, the owner. We pick everybody else up. And at just that moment, Casey calls us. He says, I got him. He's down. Now, I was kind of disappointed because I thought Casey was saying he shot him with a rifle to put him down. Fortunately for me, that's not what he meant. We headed up to where he was, to the spot he told us to go. We got out of the side-by-side, and about 300 feet on the opposite side of the road that we drove off, the elk was laying there. He was still alive. He was still kicking, but he wasn't moving from that spot. Casey called me and said, hey, bring your bow. Let's put him down as fast as we can. 15 yards away, put a shot right in his heart. Put it there. Started bleeding. 2-3 minutes, he's still kicking. Put another one in. Good shot. 2-3 minutes, he's still bleeding. Put another one in 6 inches up to the left. Good shot. About 4 minutes after that shot, he finally expired. That was the elk that I shot almost 22 hours after I first shot it. Now, if you want to see how of a shot I am, if you look at the left bottom part of the screen there, you can see the 3 arrows that I put in him while he was laying there to put him down. If you look above it on his body, you can see the arrow from the night before. I had gotten just enough of his kidney to put him down. That arrow that I was convinced, 100% convinced, hit him directly in the hams, didn't hit him in the hams at all. Hit him just far enough in front. So you can see the smile on my face. Guys, that's as much of a smile of relief as anything, me and Andrew, and then the picture here. Look, I'm not one of those guys who's huge about holding the deer out here so they look bigger and stuff like that, but I do like that picture. And if you wonder how you get an elk, a 500-pound elk, field dressed out of the woods, you get the owner, Jim, to bring the side-by-side back in with a winch on top of it, and you load in the back of a side-by-side. Never in a million years would I have said that animal fit in there, but it did. Here's what's great. Later that night, Clayton shot his elk. 4 elk in 24 hours, which was a ranch record for them. Guys, it was absolutely wonderful. And I can sit up here and I can tell you that, you know what? God's good all the time. Right? But we don't always feel it, do we? I don't understand why God works in my life the way that, look, if it was up to me, God, help me make a good shot. Boom, end of story, right? And I don't know why God chooses to build things in me that he does at times. I don't know why he allows things to happen to me that he does at times. But God works in mysterious ways nonetheless. Absolutely. Absolutely. And guys, I can tell you that the time we spent that night, the 4 of us, as we were going in to recover Clayton's elk, was some of the sweetest times that I've ever had. as we stood looking at the stars around 9:30 at night, watching them, seeing them as clear as can be, watching the stars shoot across the sky, and then going in, all of us having recovered. It was an absolutely glorious time. Just show you a couple more quick pictures of the hunt. The next morning, we took our antlers on a victory lap. It was our last night there, so what we did is we talked Casey into going to some of the places of the ranch that we hadn't seen before and just got some pictures together. This cabin is actually on top of Opal Butte. From up there, you can see Mount Rainier, you can see Mount St. Helens. Clear as day. It's absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. Then we went back to the entrance to the ranch and got our pictures by the logo there. And guys, hunting with these men was one of the best times of my life. But it's not just about hunting with the guys all the time, is it? I have been fortunate enough to be there when all of my children have harvested their first deer. Right? That was us packing up to go home the next day, the freezers, the generator, the cooler, all that stuff. That's my daughter Autumn when she was 13 years old. She harvested that in the early doe season. About 7:15 in the morning. Spoiled her to death. Anytime she's got to wait till 7:30 to shoot a deer, she's like, this is getting too long. Like, you're spoiled, right? You have no idea how good you have it. And that was on a Thursday morning. I already told my son I would take him out on Friday morning. He was in the mentored hunt. He was only 9 years old at the time. I'm like, buddy, we're not going back to private land. We're going on state game land. He's like, okay, cool. And in my mind, I'm going, there's no way we're going to see any deer, so I hope he's happy with it. That's good. Guess what? 8 o'clock in the morning. Group of doe comes walking along. He shoots the smallest one. I don't care, right? I did care about his shot placement, if you take a look at that, because I'm the one who had to do the field dressing, and it wasn't pretty. Where'd you aim, buddy? Right in the middle. Yeah, you did. But when that's right, like father, like son. We were on the ground. We were actually sitting on the ground. He was rested on a log, and he was leaning back into me. I was bracing him to get a good shot, and he was shaking with such intensity and excitement that I couldn't stop shaking. Guys, I'll never forget that. Never in a million years. That's one of my favorite pictures. We got back to the house. It's a genuine moment of him just sitting on the cooler on the back of the truck, just staring at that with satisfaction. Absolutely love it. The next year, my 14-year-old daughter, Kylie, was able to harvest her first doe in the early season. And those are memories that I will take forever. I got to throw that one in. That was one I was fortunate enough to harvest in 2017 on top of the mountain on state game lands, about 8:30 opening morning. I always wanted an 8-point, just a true 8-point. And guys, I've tried as hard as I can to make that a 20-inch inside spread, and 19 7/8 is the max that I'm getting at every stinking angle of that deer. That's my daughter and I. Why do I put that picture up, my middle daughter, Autumn? Because I like to harvest. I like to go out, I mean all business. But I realized really quick that it's not as much about when I'm with my kids, about me harvesting or her harvesting or him harvesting, as much as our time together. My father is a very simple man. Very simple man. And I realized as my kids grew older that my dad had it right the whole time. I thought he didn't know what he was doing when it came to hunting because he never came back with game. But my dad had it right. It's about the relationship. It's about the memories that you build together. It's about that time together. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. So for once in my life, I got on my phone with my daughter and we took selfies from the deer stand and we talked to people and we did all this stuff that goes against every bone in my body. There's a picture my son drew when he was in second grade, I believe. It's outstanding. He's got the bow. He's on the ladder stand. If you look real close at the deer, you see the arrows sticking out and the blood dripping to the ground. Right? It's a proud. He did shoot it in the middle, didn't he? That's such a good call. But look at the rack on that thing. I'm not so sure he didn't shoot Rudolph, but that's okay. Right? That's him a couple years later when he harvested his first deer in archery season with his grandfather's crossbow. Guys, these are the moments that I cherish. When I think about my hunting trips and my expeditions out to Oregon and British Columbia and New Mexico, I think about our time on the road together. I think about time around the campfire. I think about time that we spent investing in one another. The relationships, talking about Jesus with thankful hearts. My dad had it right. Here's what I realized. My buddy Clayt, who spent all the money on all these expeditions, that's all he cared about too. He had it right. Eventually, I'm coming around and starting to understand it as well. Time together, relationships, faith in Jesus, and a thankful heart. And I really think that's what God wants too. I really think that's what God desires from our lives. So I want to leave you with that tonight. I want to leave you with this simple verse, 1 John chapter 3, verse 18. Dear children, let us not love with words and tongue, but in actions and in truth. And the way you develop those relationships is time together, loving on one another, and just being together. Nothing outstanding about my story. Hopefully you can relate to it on some level, not the misses and the bad shots, right? And hopefully God can work together in our lives to bring us closer to him. Would you bow your heads with me in prayer again? God, you are a good God, even when it doesn't feel like it. And you love us even when we don't deserve it. God, when my heart is not set on you, your heart is still set on me, and I am thankful for it. So in my shortcomings and in my ineffectiveness, I pray that your spirit and your love will be manifested that much more in our lives and in my life, so when others look at me and us, they simply see you. We pray that you be glorified in our lives to that end. And I thank you for this time together. We ask these things in Christ's holy name. Amen. Guys, thanks so much for allowing me to share. Sorry if I put you to sleep.
Funny. Appreciate it. All right, well, we're so blessed that you all came out tonight. Hopefully you had a good experience. Hopefully your bellies are full, your hearts are full, your minds are full of some adventures that lie ahead for you, maybe out in the woods, and we're glad that you could be with us. If you don't have a church home on Sunday mornings, I hope you all know you're welcome to come here and worship with us anytime. 10:15 is our service on Sunday mornings, but we're glad that you were here tonight, and blessings to you as you go. Drive safely on the way home, and don't hit a deer. That's not how you want to take care of that, okay?